Okay, so welcome back, everybody, to everybody in the room, but also to our colleagues who are joining us online. Thank you so much for being here today. We're about to kick off our afternoon session. So I wanted to give you first of all, my name's Fiona Wilson. I'm a faculty member at the University of New Hampshire, just north of Boston, and I also run our Center for Social Innovation and Enterprise. We do a lot of curricular and co-curricular work around sustainability and social entrepreneurship, and have been doing a lot of things with B Corps, and I'm very happy to have Bart Houlihan here again. Bart joined us in New Hampshire a couple of years ago when we were trying to get the legislation passed in New Hampshire, which I'm proud to say that we helped make that happen with lots of other wonderful people leading those efforts. But I want to give you a sense of what we're going to be doing for the next 2.5 hours. So we're really pleased to have Bart Houlihan. I'll formally introduce Bart in a minute, but most of you know Bart is one of the 3 co-founders of B Lab. And so we wanted to have him join our academic gathering this year to do a couple of things. So first of all, Bart is going to share with us a sort of an update on the status of the B Lab movement globally. So he'll share a little bit about what's going on in the B Corp Leaders Gathering across the city. He's going to tell us a little bit about what's working with B Lab and how the successes that they're having in scaling this movement around the world. But he's also going to give us some candid sense of some of the challenges and obstacles to scaling this movement. I think that's going to be particularly important and interesting for all of us as researchers, but also as people who develop curriculum and develop engagement projects with students about, thinking about how do we help B Lab address some of these challenges and obstacles that they're facing. The second part of what Bart is going to do with us is to enter more into a dialogue about how B Lab has interacted with the academic community, both in the past. I think he's going to be some candid about some of the challenges they have around resources to do that, how they're currently seeing sort of the academic and B Lab interaction, but also some of the ideas they have for future collaborations with the academic community. And again, that's going to feed into some of the discussions we're all going to have. And then once Bart has shared some of his thoughts with us, we're going to break into 4 discussion groups. They're posted around the room for people here in the room. You can read these and decide which one you might like to join. And for people online, I will share those in more detail as we get to that point in the agenda. Okay. And so we'll break into discussion groups, and then we'll come back and hear from the groups about some of the things that you have discussed and the ideas that you've generated. So let me just say a few words about why we're so happy to have Bart here before I introduce Bart. I was here yesterday when the B local communities were gathering. And they very generously gave us a few minutes just to talk about what we'd be doing here over the next couple of days. And waiting to come up to speak, I'd heard like 3 or 4 times, don't talk about research too much because entrepreneurs and B Corp CEOs, they don't care about research. That's sort of not relevant to them. So just talk about the engagement stuff, okay? And so when I came up to speak yesterday, I said the following, and I want to share it with all of you, which is, my view is that I think maybe academia is probably, we have a branding problem. I think the university kind of world is a vastly underutilized resource for helping scale this B Lab movement. And I said this in my introduction earlier today that, we think as academics, we think of the 3-legged stool of academia, of teaching and research and engagement. And I think increasingly we need to think about blurring the lines between those 3 things. I think we need to be thinking about community engaged research that really helps address some of the challenges that both B Corp CEOs and the B Lab movement is facing. We need to think about sort of action research, right? There's not just research that's done in a vacuum. We want our research to be relevant for practice. We need to think about curriculum that isn't just in the classroom, right? But a curriculum that is engaging students and getting them out into the community and maybe helping companies become B Corp certified. So I'm hoping today that we can have a really open conversation and a sort of a generative conversation about how do we think about these things in a slightly more expansive way so that we can really be partners to B Lab in helping achieve the vision that I think we all share. That's why we're all here, right? So with that said, I'm going to introduce Bart. So Bart is one of the 3 co-founders of B Lab. They've been doing this work now for about a decade. Amazing to think it's been a decade, but exciting to see the progress. Bart, I think, brings a really great background into his work as a co-founder at B Lab because he's been in the trenches. So before B Lab, he was the CFO, COO, and president of a company called And1, which was a basketball, footwear, and apparel company. And over the 11 years that Bart was, I don't think you weren't a founder, but you joined the company very soon after it had started. And so over the 11 years that Bart and Jay were with that company, they grew it to have $250 million in revenues and be distributed in 85 countries. So he really understands what it takes to run a business that is both financially successful, but also has a positive impact in the world. He also, before that, was in investment banking. We will forgive you for that transgression. I'm kidding. And is a graduate. Perhaps all the more surprising that you're doing this work, given that was your early experience. And is a graduate of Stanford University. So we're just super grateful. This is a busy couple of days for you. I know you're spending a lot of time with the B Corp leaders from around the world. So thanks for sharing some time to be with us. I'm going to hand over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So honest to goodness, the spot right after lunch sucks. It is a difficult spot, right? You all got a little food baby going on. You had a good lunch. You're a little tired from the food. So I'm going to try to keep this light and keep us engaged. We're going to talk for about 45 minutes just to give you an overview of what's happening with the movement globally and also be really candid about the things that we're facing as we look towards our next decade of hopefully accelerating impact. And then we'll have some time to chat at the back end where we can have a candid conversation about how we've been working with academia so far and what we aspire to do moving forward. I want to begin with an explanation of what B Lab is, and because we're kind of B obsessed, right? And admittedly, it is a bit confusing to understand all the different B's related to this movement. Let's begin with B Lab. B Lab's a nonprofit. We were started in 2006. We certified our first B Corporation in 2007. We're currently about a $10 million NGO here in the United States, or actually south of us in the United States. We have 72 staff members in 4 offices, including an office here in Toronto. We have about a $10 million budget. About $6 million of that is covered through earned income. The remaining $4 million comes from philanthropy. And we'll have an opportunity at the back end to talk more about business model, if that's intriguing to anybody to understand how that earned income strategy works, okay? Importantly, B Lab is just one of several B Labs across the globe. You've heard from my dear friend and partner, Maria Amelia, who is one of the co-founders of Systema Bay. So B Lab talks about this is a global movement with local execution. What does that mean? It means that we find people like Maria Amelia. It would be the height of hubris for 3 Americans to try to head down to Latin America to build a movement of people using business as a force for good. And so we find on-the-ground entrepreneurs who can drive the movement locally. If you look at the map, it's a little faded, my bad, but you can see some of the dots where we have sister nonprofits. They're all organized as nonprofits. And the idea is we have people who are regional experts who bring an understanding of the ecosystem in that market and then deploy, frankly, sometimes different strategies about how best to build the movement in that marketplace with a few commonalities. One commonality is we're all anchored around a certification that we'll talk a little bit more about, that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And secondly, we all have the same vision. The vision is around trying to redefine success in business so that one day all companies compete not to be best in the world, but best for the world. And from that is delivered a shared and durable prosperity. Okay? So that is the long-term vision of all of our collective B labs with an anchor of the certification, and then how we execute in each market really is predicated on the experts in that market. Right? What I thought I'd do is provide, and I'm sure there's going to be people in this room who already know the next like 6 slides, and there's going to be some who this is still relatively new to. So forgive me if this is redundant. I sometimes assume that everybody knows what we do, and the truth is it is pretty rare that everybody knows everything that we do. So bear with me as we kind of walk through our theory of change and the different elements of the work at B Lab. It begins with a theory of change that believes in the power of leadership. Okay, so we're obviously trying to change the role of business in society. We believe that the best way to get there is through a demonstration effect theory of change. We find best-in-class companies. We give them an identity. We call them certified B corporations, and then we celebrate them. We shine a light on them to try to inspire other companies to follow, to be more like a B Corp, with the long-term objective of inspiring billions of people, consumers, workers, investors, policymakers, to patronize high-impact companies. The end objective, the shared and durable prosperity. So that is the most simplistic way we can articulate our theory of change. Find leaders, shine a light, encourage others to follow, and then get people to support those high-impact businesses. Pretty straightforward. Let's kind of get into the guts of it. You mostly are, I'm sure, familiar with the certification. It's important to recognize how this certification is different than what exists in the marketplace. Because the truth is, there are 300, at least, eco and social certifications. What makes this one a bit different is it's not about just your product or one specific practice. It elevates the conversation to the whole business. The idea behind the certification is it's supposed to make good easy. It's supposed to allow all of us to find a good company. We believe the evolution of the marketplace is all of us supporting not just good products, but supporting good businesses. And frankly, when you buy an organic apple, it doesn't tell you a damn thing about who picked it. Okay, when you visit a company in a LEED certified building, it doesn't tell you what they're doing with their employees. The real question is, what is the business doing? The impact of a business is far greater than any individual product and or individual practice. So that's what the certification is. We draw analogies about fair traded coffee is B Corp to business. You all know that. And I think you know the pieces of the certification. There are 3 core elements. The first is all certified B Corps have to take and pass an impact assessment that evaluates their impact on all their stakeholders. It looks at everything the company does, and they got to score at least an 80 out of a 200-point range. Now, that sounds like a pretty simple measure. The truth is, it's incredibly challenging. It's incredibly challenging. The average score for these best-in-class companies on our assessments is about a 95. Okay, so average score is below 50%. Really hard to do all things well. Importantly, also for all of you, you'd probably be interested that you can't do one thing well and pass. There's no way to get 80 points if you're just green enough. Okay? If you're an ESOP, but you're dumping your effluents out the back door, you ain't gonna pass. The idea is trying to create a balance so that truly is a corporate certification, right? That it evaluates everything that you touch. Typically, you see companies that have at least one area, one impact area of excellence, and at least moderate performance in 3 other areas. That's how you get to the 80 points, all right? The second requirement is after you've taken and passed that impact assessment, you gotta be transparent with your results if you wanna be certified. So on our website, you can find every certified B Corp and their impact report. And that impact report will tell you how they've done in all the stakeholder areas and even in the sub-stakeholder areas. Third and finally is around accountability, that at the end of the day, it's not enough just to be an exceptional performer. You gotta make sure that that performance is built to last. It can't be predicated on a visionary CEO or a board of directors that buys in. How do you know that that performance is going to withstand the test of time, new money, new management, and even new ownership? To do that, you got to have a governance change. We fundamentally have to change the DNA of a business if we expect that performance to last over time. And that's what really differentiates this certification more than anything else, is the legal requirement. So every certified B Corp has committed to rewrite their corporate governing documents to include the interest of stakeholders. Okay? We make it really straightforward. We'll give you the language. It is, as you all know better than I do, pretty complicated because it depends upon where you're incorporated and how you're incorporated. So we've worked to try to figure out the pathway, and I think we've figured it out so far for about 24 countries, where we have a clear pathway on how to rewrite your corporate governing documents to include the interests of stakeholders. And so it's fundamentally redefining the purpose of the business and changing fiduciary duty so that executives and the board of directors are accountable not just to the interests of shareholders, but also the impact of their decisions on stakeholders.